You're going to see 0% financing, 4th of July sale, $10,000 off today. You're going to see all of these incentives.
Yeah, including some dude making balloon animals for the kids.
Yeah, and the guy doing like this thing out front. So you go
the James Wiggins dance
stop.
move.
So
Sorry.
They call it the Jiffy Lube, by the way. So told you it's going to be interesting. You talk about it privately. We talk about it publicly. This is the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered podcast. Welcome again to the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered podcast. I'm your host, Mr. James Wiggins, the co-host with the most, at least what I can see on my title, and my partner in crime, Mr. Keith Robinson.
Yes, sir.
Keith, tell us about our guests today and what they talked about.
Our guest is each other.
Oh,
because every once in a while there's a topic that is important enough that you and I just want to get onto a microphone and talk to people about. Yeah, yell at people.
We got on some soapboxes.
We did. And it needed to happen because we talk about why commission sharing needs to stop, not just because there was a lawsuit, but how it should be approached in the listing and selling of a home. We talk about how people need to give up on these crazy ass workarounds that they're trying to figure out and focus on how to build their business the right way. We even give you some ways to think about it as a positive and how you could structure your business differently to win more clients.
It's a really fun show. Keith and I definitely ranted a little bit, so strap in. You'll be interested to hear our conversations. So
you're gonna dig it. Put it in your ears, kids.
Keith, welcome to the podcast.
Heck yeah.
We've been trying to get you on the show we're 72 episodes in. It finally happened. We got Mr. Robinson here.
I'm hard to book.
You are hard to book.
So y'all might be wondering, where is our guest? The answer is we don't have one.
Yeah.
James and I had some stuff that we thought was important enough that sometimes when he and I are talking on the phone, we're like, man, that should have been a podcast. Yeah. So this is one of those times where we're going to take one of those telephone conversations and put it into a microphone to share it with the audience.
And because we have no guest and we're being a little goofy today, I have no idea where this is going to go, but it's probably going to be funny by the end. So
let's go. Yeah. I'm excited about the unsure destination of this podcast. So let's start with this, James, because you and I were chatting about this. You've been doing keynotes all over the country about this. And if I'm going to be honest, we'll let the audience behind the curtain a little bit. One of my favorite things is when you lose your mind and go on one of your rants. And I know it's one of the audience's favorite things too. So you've been going on this rant, particularly all across the country, about sharing commissions, people trying to find workarounds, and just when it comes to this new world post August 17th and people sharing commissions, what is your thought around that from a macro and micro standpoint?
Okay. So
brace yourself, kids.
Brace yourself. I'm going to use some logic in this to help people understand my position, so everybody kind of follows this process. If you think about, I'm going to use car dealerships as a base example, just for starting. When car dealerships are selling cars left and right, and you go on the lot to buy a car, and they're having zero issues selling cars, you're never going to see 0% financing or $5,000 off or $10,000 off. You're just going to see MSRP of the car. You go to the salesperson, you say, I'd like to buy this car. They say, great, this is the cost. You say, I'm not paying that. And you begin to negotiate. Okay.
Right.
They are not.
Or if it's even a hot car, they'll mark it up over MSRP.
That's correct. They will. Yeah. Absolutely. Good point. So, if it's a car that's very popular, Ford F-350 Super Duty, they never discount them. You know why? Because they're very popular at all times and they always get the cost they want. And they may even mark them up depending upon if it's a new edition. So point's valid. You don't tell people what you're going or are willing to go down to in advance of the buyer making an offer.
Right.
Okay. Let's go the other way. Car dealerships.
You mean the dealership isn't like they're not coming out. They're saying the price is the price and you can make an offer, but the price is the price.
Yeah. Or maybe they do have intention of going down on something, but they're just going to wait until you make an offer and negotiate with you to get the best net possible.
Right.
Okay. Go the other way. Car dealerships are struggling. It's not a good market. It's a buyer's market. So we'll call that one the seller's market. Now it's a buyer's market. Buyer's market is that they can't get cars off the lot. They got too much inventory. It's costing them money. You're going to see 0% financing, 4th of July sale, $10,000 off today. You're going to see all of these incentives.
Yeah, including some dude making balloon animals for the kids.
Yeah, and the guy doing like this thing out front. So you got
the James Wiggins dance
stop.
move.
So
Sorry.
They call it the Jiffy Lube, by the way. So told you this is going to be interesting. So if you think conceptually about how the world operates, not just car dealerships, but any product and service, you do not advertise incentives or concessions or whatever unless you need to. Let's go now.
What does that have to do with when I'm thinking about listing my house?
So I'm going to make the controversial statement now. I do not believe that you are serving your seller correctly if you are advertising compensation in advance of an offer. Only if it's a buyer's market should you offer potential compensation and or concessions, because there is 50 houses for sale and 2 potential buyers that the seller needs to incentivize the buyer to write an offer on that house. What you should be doing, depending upon market conditions, so that we're all very clear here, everybody hears what I'm saying, depending upon market conditions, is simply this. Seller is willing to entertain any and all requests, put it in the purchase contract.
Right. Or put it in writing, whatever's appropriate for your state.
But you can advertise that. Yeah. By the way, what I just said, you can advertise on the MLS. I didn't say compensation. I didn't say concession. I didn't say anything. I said the seller is willing to entertain any and all requests, put it in the offer, or whatever mechanism you want to do. You're simply stating that we're open to anything. Now, the reason why that's beneficial to the seller is because in this new post-August 17th world, the buyer and buyer's agent will have negotiated whatever the compensation rate is. And as a seller, I'm not showing my hand ahead of time. I'm not saying that we wouldn't offer compensation or pay compensation. I'm not saying that I wouldn't pay compensation and do a concession. I'm simply stating in the first part of negotiation, just tell me what you want. I'll take all the offers, look at all of them. Keith, I might counter every single one of them, move it up so that I get as big a net as possible. The point here is that the proper process for this is to tell a seller, and this is very important now, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you sit down with them. This is what I charge to sell your property. And the first thing they're going to go is they're going to say, I don't want to offer any compensation to the buyer's agent because I read all this stuff on the media. Here's the script. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what is most important to you? Is it the net proceeds of the property? Meaning how much money you're going to walk away with? Of course. Okay. So I'm going to give you the example, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, that if we had a full price offer at your asking price with the buyer saying they'll pay their agent's compensation, we had a second offer come across, $100,000 over asking with a request for you to pay the buyer's agent's compensation. But by doing that, they can finance it. And you netted $70,000 more. Which offer is better for you?
I would like the extra $70,000, please.
Right. Logically, that's what they would say. Okay, so Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I just want to be very clear. You get to choose whatever you want to do. It's always been that way. What I would like to do is advertise to the world that we are willing to entertain any and all requests and to put it in your offer. Is that fair?
Yeah.
The seller's going to go, yeah, it makes total sense. Great.
Look, since time immemorial, right? Like when the cave person was selling the very first cave, that person cared about their net, right? Like people, I do understand someone having a reaction. They read the headlines, the knee jerk of, no, if I don't want to pay a commission if I don't have to. Sure. Understand that logic. That's a natural pathway for someone to walk down. And it's our job to help them understand, like, hey, that's literally what we do. As a fiduciary, we put their interests above our own and we advise them And sometimes that means we got to lovingly say, hey, silly, you don't actually care. What you care about the most is the net and what gives us the best opportunity for the net. Because I can already hear the comments like, well, what about the appraisal? Sure. Right. Understand. There are risks that are associated with it. But I would rather have my shot at $70,000 than, in your example, than not my shot at $70,000.
This is how we did it in 2021. This is literally like when we had 15 offers, we were all, we're escalation clauses and like this isn't anything different. And
correct.
So this is the second point I want to make. It's super important what I'm about to share because people just are not getting this. So everybody knows, you've probably heard this, like, unfortunately, Keith and I are a named defendant. We run a very large company. So we're a named defendant in these cases. We have a little bit more information. Yay. We have a little more information than most of you do because we're working with antitrust lawyers. Extremely important piece of advice I'm going to tell you right now. Stop sharing commissions.
Yeah.
Do not do cooperative compensation. Let me explain to you so that everybody understands the problem with this. Okay. If you are sitting down with a seller and you are using a standardized form that was created by a committee of competing brokers that is being used across multiple companies, and you are sitting down now telling a seller, this is what I'm going to charge, and I'm going to remit a portion of this to the buyer's agent, the buyer broker. You are now inserting yourself into what lawyers can claim as a potential conspiracy, that you're propping up compensation. That's, by the way, what they did in these previous cases that everyone's settling. They said there was a committee of people who created rules that used the MLS as a mechanism to prop up compensation. That's the vehicle. Whether you agree with it or not, we agree with you that it's not a valid claim, but that's
correct.
What they used. And then everyone got sued. And then we end up in settlement. Now we're talking about doing it through forms and using a mechanism created by a common group of people to prop up compensation. We're at round 2 for the lawsuit.
The next lawsuit.
Yes.
Yeah, we're teeing up the next lawsuit
exactly.
if we do it that way.
And this is super, super important. You don't need to do it anyway because it has been clarified by Fannie and Freddie for interested party contributions and all of it, that if you decide you want to advertise compensation, you can do that, not on the MLS, on your own listings. But all you do is simply tell the buyer's agent to put it in the offer. And instead of you collecting money from the seller and remitting it to the buyer broker, the seller
from the seller
is paying it directly through the closing process. You have removed your liability by not facilitating that transfer of money.
Yeah. And more importantly, it's like, look, I don't know why exactly. I guess I do know why, right? Change is hard, especially change that's forced upon us. We're even more resistant to it. But the pervasive effort, if you put the same effort into improving your business practices for what will be the new approach, if you put that same effort that you're putting into these crazy ass workarounds that people are trying to come up with, my favorite one that I've heard is, I know what we'll do. The last 3 numbers of the sales price, we'll just make that reflect, wink, wink, what we're willing to offer. Like we'll put the last 3 numbers will be $250 and everyone will know what that means. Like, stop it.
Yeah.
Like, just put that effort into getting better at the craft and adjusting to how this will be going forward. You'll have more success. Like, stop trying to find these workarounds and start trying to get better at what has always been the most important to the seller. One of the most important things, there are many, there's several, but one of, and usually paramount, is what am I going to net? And keeping it open, having everyone craft their best possible offer. We'll review those offers. My seller is open to just about anything. Write your best offer. We'll compare it to the others, and we'll get back to you as soon as I process that with my seller. What is wrong? Like, why is that so hard?
I don't know. Yeah. To me, it's very clear. The process of negotiation should be you're thinking about your seller. You're not saying you're not going to do it. You're just saying put whatever request you have in the contract. Right. Super freaking basic. And then remove your liability of sharing commissions. Like, you don't need to do that.
And you're hinting around it, and I'm going to say it, and I'm agreeing with you, is I could almost say that if you were to just flat out offer compensation, you're not being a fiduciary for your client.
Oh, I'm saying that.
Yeah, I know you are. I'm putting a point on it, right? Yeah. Because what if someone was willing to write an offer and they were willing to pay their buyer's agent commission? Well, now your seller is get out of the way. Stop trying to do it the way you've done it. Stop trying to find a workaround. Speaking of workaround, how about some of these commission sharing websites that have popped up, James? I know you've been talking about those as well. Prepare yourself, kids. James is about to go off.
So I'm going to read this because I think it's important for everybody to understand. So the naysayers and the keyboard warriors who are going to write comments, that's our terminology for whatever. Anyways, I'm very clear about the settlement agreement. I've read it probably more than you have. And paragraph, so H58.5 of the settlement agreement with NAR states the following, and this is important, and I'm going to bring it down to layman's terms. So agree not to create, facilitate, or support any non-MLS mechanism, including by providing listing information to an internet aggregator's website for such purpose, for listing brokers or sellers to make offers of compensation to buyer brokers or other buyer representatives, either directly or through buyers. Now, that's legalese for commission sharing websites, aggregators,
You're right.
Doing websites where you're putting all of competing brokers' offers of compensation into one place. Now, just for clarity, for someone who's going to write this, but James, that section's referring to specifically to associations and MLSs. I understand that. For legalese purposes, there's two things to understand. There's the letter of the agreement and the spirit of the agreement. You can look it up yourself. Yep. There's two very different things here. Both the Department of Justice and the plaintiff's lawyers have been very clear that they do not want a place where people are searching for or the ability to steer, using their words, clients based upon offers of compensation. Now, you could argue that they don't have any ground to stand on, we should do it, screw them, etc. And you could take that stance on it.
Sure.
But let me be very clear with you. Every person who's listening to this podcast cannot afford the defense costs from an antitrust firm. Keith and I know firsthand how painful it is on this stuff. And so do the plaintiff's lawyers. They understand what it costs. Let me just give you some basis for this.
Real quick though, because even if it's not an antitrust firm, trust me, there are other attorneys in your local town, in your area, who have been paying attention to these cases. And it doesn't even have to be an antitrust firm at this point. It could just be a copycat lawsuit that's coming along from your local. You don't have to go full class action shenanigans.
No,
you could just have a local attorney that has been paying attention and they could sue you.
Yeah. And that's the point I was going to make. And then I'll bring this full circle as to why you shouldn't be doing this in addition to it is if you get sued, you will spend several months and about $100,000 just getting to the point of filing a motion to dismiss, of which I can guarantee you the judge will not dismiss the case. You'll then go through interrogatories, discovery, and depositions. That will cost you somewhere between $500,000 to $750,000. Then you'll go to try and file a motion for summary judgment in hopes that the plaintiffs don't have an... My point here is you can't afford it, so just get over it.
Right. Yeah, it's over.
Now, the reason why it's important to avoid this as well is because, again, you're using this joint place to share commissions, which I just explained you shouldn't even be doing anyway. Okay. Right. Now, going a little bit further with this, the Department of Justice has been very clear what they do not want. I don't agree with a lot of what the DOJ says, and that's debatable, et cetera. But what you don't want is the full weight of the federal government on you, in addition to it. So the point here is just a 3-step process. Number one is understanding that you really shouldn't be advertising compensation or concessions unless you need to. My opinion, there are different opinions on that, but I don't think you should unless the market dictates that. 2, commission sharing is a really bad idea because you're putting yourself in the middle for potential claims, and you don't need to do it, as I just explained to you. Doesn't affect anything. 3rd is these commission sharing websites are a really bad idea. 4th comment, just for clarity, but James, we're allowed to share that information. You are on your own listing or on your brokerage website or your own advertising.
But
on your own property.
Smush them all together.
And you cannot do it through MLS data, just to be clear. That's the exception. Now, people will say that the settlement allows me to do it on these aggregator websites. technically, arguably, from the letter of the law, yes. Spirit of the contract, no. And you're absolutely asking to get sued if you want to do it. So I would highly advise you not to do that. Brokers listening to this podcast, you damn well better have a policy in place on how you want to handle this with your agents, because I guarantee you that if they file some type of claim, it's not just the agents that are going to get sued.
No, it never is.
It's going to be you too.
Yeah, and usually it's because the broker has more money than the agent.
Right, which they don't anymore because they're all broke. So,
and just to anchor back into the original point, which is I always, whenever I try to think about something, I try to think about through the lens of the fiduciary responsibility. I think if you use that as your North Star, you will always be fine. So whether you could or couldn't, debatable, you've eloquently laid out why we think it's a bad idea. We agree on this. But then there's shouldn't, right? And your job as a listing agent is to represent your client to the fullest. And it's very hard for me to understand how starting out from the gate offering this in some way is to their benefit.
Agreed.
I'm open to that debate, especially if you're buying the cocktails. I'll hang around as long as you're buying cocktails and we can talk about it. But it's just, what is the right fiduciary duty, right? And I think if you look at it through
statutory, depending upon the state, but the point's the same. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So anyway,
I want to shift this now because I'm going to go from the negative side, which I just was on. I mean, sort of negative, but positives. I think there's just a different way to do this. It's just easier for everybody and less complicated.
Totally.
Now, you've been going around the country doing keynotes, which has been kind of cool to see. And I wanted to ask you a question because you've been really passionate about this. And I love it because you're right. Your view is that you like these changes as well. Yeah. Because you get to curate your own buyer experience without, I'm going to paraphrase, without the listing agent dictating anything in advance. Right.
Yeah. So now granted,
soapbox me.
Yeah. I've earned the reputation, Crazy Uncle Keith, through my life choices and the way I look at the world. But I think of this as a really good thing. And I know that sounds crazy at first blush. And my initial reaction was not that this is a good thing. But if you, when you bifurcate the commissions the way that it will be going forward, it was very hard to curate a buyer experience and to curate a service level when you had no idea what the revenue line was going to look like. There would be a decent variance between any given listing on what you would receive. And so it's very hard to operate your business when you aren't sure what your top line revenue is going to be.
Yeah, because you'd have to cater the conversation around, well, this is what's being here and this is the difference. And it just makes it a awkward conversation.
Correct. Yeah. Now we have the opportunity to maybe have a good, better, best scenario, right? Where you could have a 3-tiered system or a 2-tiered system. Here's my normal program, but people have shown that they will pay for convenience. When you order something on DoorDash, I did the research, it's roughly 40% more than if you were to drive to pick it up.
By the way, can I say something because it's just so relevant? Yeah. So my partner in crime here, who I love dearly, we're obviously very close friends. I say this completely lovingly, is the laziest human being when it comes to certain things in his life. And
I have a very firm belief that smart, lazy people are the most successful.
Yeah.
Now that I also happen to be a smart, lazy person.
You are,
but
you are.
I know I would love to delegate as much as possible. So spend all of my day in my core competency.
So tell them about this tiered thing, because I think it's so relevant, because you're the person that would do the Ritz-Carlton tiered experience.
Yeah. So imagine if you paid X for my normal experience, but I also had this Ritz-Carlton like experience. And in that, and then I also try to look at things when I'm thinking about them. I love going beyond the close of escrow, because once you close the contract with a client, there's this weird, it feels a little like a bad breakup, right? Like you just ghost them because you're on to working with the next client. Right. And you used to talk every day, all the time. And now there's no real reason to talk anymore. Right. Yeah. So it's sort of this abrupt ending. So I started thinking about it through the lens of how could I extend our relationship and deepen the effect that I'm having after we close on the home. And so I've moved recently, and a couple years ago. So it was really fresh in my mind because we were building a house. The house was delayed because all houses are delayed. And I promised the kids that we would have Christmas in the new house. And the house was done enough, like on December 21st.
Yeah, like literally before Christmas.
We moved in the week of Christmas.
Yeah.
And moving is insanely stressful. And then moving and trying to set up for Christmas was even more stressful. And I was just heaving money at the problem. I hired packers. I hired unpackers. I hired a professional organizer. I did all these different things. And I thought, oh, what if you curated that kind of experience and charged for it? So instead of my base, which is X, I now have this premium service that's X plus Y, or a larger percentage than the other one. But you get things like, I will personally hire your mover for you, right? I vet it. I find a great mover in town. I will take care of the cost. I will hire a packer. I will hire an unpacker. I will give you, if you need a storage unit, I'll cover the first 90 days of your storage
By the
unit.
way, all those companies have referral fees they'll pay the agent.
Yeah.
They all do.
Yeah, you do have to disclose if you're receiving a referral fee, but it's worth doing.
Yeah.
I would,
because who wants to work with a moving company? I don't.
No one. Yeah. I don't want to, the client doesn't want to figure all that out. Yeah. They will, but they don't want to. Right. I would do lawn care, right? Yard maintenance for the first 90 days. Yeah. You don't like the guy after 90 days? Cool. You can find your own, but if you like him, he'll just keep coming to your house. You just got to pay for it.
Yeah.
Now. Yeah. You could go on and on and on, but now because I control my revenue line, I can add these different things that have a real expense and then margin them for my business, right? And actually make more money on the other side of this for the clients that are willing to pay the extra. And even if it's a very small percentage that actually will, what ends up happening is there's less, the debate isn't as much about what are you going to charge. The debate becomes on which program I would prefer from the ones that you are offering.
It also makes it easier to have a discussion when I'm making this up as I go, but it just, my brain went down this road of, well, so-and-so does it for XYZ. We have a different level of service depending upon what you want to do. Well, I want that one for this. Well, what would you like me to take out of the experience? Like, it just doesn't, so it's an easier conversation to have. And, like, here's the packages. So,
and if there's one piece you want from over here, can I throw it in? Sure. But if you want the whole thing, you got to pay for the whole thing. Right. That's just how it works.
By the way, you're also you're not degrading what you do. What I love about your model that you're saying two, but you could even do three, but it's like, here's what I do. And then here's this thing on top. Yeah. And so it could also be, which I think some people need to think about. I'm not going to deny this. Like, when you've got a deal where the buyer and seller know each other, they're neighbors. Sure. You should have a process or a structure that's just, I'm going to take care of the paperwork. So
I have flipped and continue to look for fix and flip and ground up construction opportunities. I've been in residential real estate.
Got a flood of emails.
Yeah, cool. Send them my way. I'll take a look at them. And I've been in residential real estate for 26 years. Look, I'll be honest, I don't need the same level of support as someone who buys a house every 7 to 10.
Sure.
I probably shouldn't pay the full rack rate, the normal rate, right? Especially if you're an investor who just bulldozes houses, like you aren't doing an inspection, et cetera, right? So having a 3-tiered system or a 2-tiered system or whatever system you want, the beauty now is you have the ability to control the revenue line so that you can adequately deliver the experience that you want to create for your clients. And at the end of the day, you strip all the lawsuits and all the paperwork and all the bullshit out of the way. This is a service business. We don't sell houses. We manage people's emotions through an experience. We shepherd them through one of the most stressful transactions in their lives. We just happen to monetize that through the sale of a home. But that's not what we do. And so now you have the ability to really curate that buyer experience. And for me, I think that's a good thing.
I don't know how to add anything else on top of that, because that was a damn good close right there. That's that we call it in the business of like, there's the mic drop. We hope you guys all enjoyed that. The point here was just to cover some real hot button issues right now. Keith and I are worried that there's a lot of conversations going on that are not the conversations you should be having. You need to be very conscious about the amount of litigation going on and make smart business decisions. To Keith's point, you need to be thinking about your statutory or fiduciary responsibility to your seller. And
then start to think about it through
the future.
How could this be a good thing?
Totally.
How could you take these changes and modify your business to the benefit of your client?
So much opportunity.
Yeah.
So much. All right, buddy. Appreciate it.
All right, brother. Talk to you later.
Soon. Yep. It's our job to say out loud what everybody's only thinking to themselves. It's your job to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode.